This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9. English news as it should be.
Very good morning. You're watching News 9. I'm Karthik Malhotra. On the show this morning, we will bring you the estimates expected around India's second quarter GDP growth numbers. Most economists are converging on a growth rate higher than 7%. We'll get you an expert view on the show this morning. Also on the show, Kranti Batini will be joining us later, where we discuss what next for the Indian stock markets. Remember, Sensex and Nifty both breached their lifetime highs intraday yesterday before closing a little under. And finally on the show, we'll also bring you, is Donald Trump really going to be in a capacity to exempt income tax for all US citizens? He's making the claim on account of high tariff income for the US economy. This and more on this edition of Morning Brief at 9. This Friday morning, you're watching Morning Brief at 9 right here on News 9. First up, all the headlines. The National Statistics Office is all set to release India's GDP growth print for the July to September quarter 2 today at 4 p.m. Economists and analysts predict around 7% growth after a bumper 7.8% GDP growth recorded in the first quarter. An IMF report says India is likely to miss its target of becoming a $5 trillion economy by FY28 marginally on depreciating rupee versus the US dollar. India to now reach the $5 trillion mark in FY29. E-commerce firm Meesho to open its maiden IPO on Wednesday, December 3rd. Price band set at 105 to 111 rupees per share. Company aims to raise 4,250 crore rupees through this fresh offering. Mahindra & Mahindra launches the XEV 9S, a 7-seater electric SUV at a starting ex-showroom price of under 20 lakh rupees. And after its board meeting yesterday, Bandhan Bank has announced that it plans to auction its non-performing assets under the Swiss challenge method to clear bad loans worth almost 7,000 crore rupees. The Indian stock market kisses lifetime high with Sensex closing above the 86,000 mark and Nifty 50 touching the 26,300 levels briefly on Thursday before scaling back from the peak. GIFT Nifty indicates flat start to the Indian markets in trade today. The Supreme Court says self-regulation mechanisms for online media are ineffective, proposes a truly independent and autonomous body to ensure oversight and accountability of social media content. US President Donald Trump says he may cut income tax completely in America as tariff income rises for the world's largest economy. But shoppers at the start of the Black Friday sales in the United States check out with lighter carts as inflation hits shop shelves. Those are the headlines. Let's get into the top story that we're tracking for you this morning that emerged yesterday. The Supreme Court has observed that self-regulation mechanisms for online media are ineffective, noting that a truly independent and autonomous body is needed to ensure proper oversight as well as accountability. Now, a bench led by Chief Justice of India Suryakant and Justices Jomalia Bagchi was hearing petitions filed by podcaster Ranveer Alabadia and others against FIRs linked to alleged obscene content in the show India's Got Latent. Now, the court has expanded the scope of the matter to examine the need for guidelines against online obscenity. Now, during the hearing, Attorney General R. Venkatramani and Senior Solicitor General Tushar Mehta informed the court that the centre is drafting new norms and consulting with stakeholders on stronger content regulation. The Solicitor General noted that the problem extends beyond obscenity to perversity in user-generated content uploaded on personal platforms like YouTube. Now, visibly concerned, Chief Justice of India Suryakant remarked, and I quote him, "Anyone can create a channel today, but who are they accountable to?" unquote. The bench emphasized that while freedom of speech is vital, it cannot become a shield for harmful content. The court also suggested that content with adult themes must carry clear warnings to viewers. The Supreme Court made a strong remark while hearing the Delhi NCR pollution case as well. The bench, led by Chief Justice Suryakant, said the court does not have a magic wand to fix the pollution crisis overnight. The judges pointed out that they also live in Delhi NCR and face the same toxic air, but there is no single reason behind this problem. The comments came after the court appointed senior advocate Aprajita Singh, who told the bench that Delhi's yearly pollution issue has become a health emergency. She said there are solutions on paper but very little action on ground. Well, the bench also noted that the issue gets attention only during the winter months. The Chief Justice said the matter appears every Diwali season and then disappears after winter. He assured that the Supreme Court will now monitor the case regularly and continue hearings. But this comes at a time when the air quality in Delhi NCR has been dipping sharply. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear the matter on Monday. And in news around the economy of India, India is projected to become a $5 trillion economy only by FY29, a year later than previously estimated, according to the IMF's latest staff consultation report released on Wednesday. Now, the delay reflects a combination of slower than expected nominal GDP growth and a sharper depreciation of the Indian rupee against the US dollar. The IMF now expects India to cross the $4 trillion mark in FY26, that's this financial year, and reach about $4.96 trillion in FY28, just narrowly missing the $5 trillion target. In February of 2025, the IMF had forecasted India's GDP at $5.15 trillion in FY28. The latest projection is now nearly $200 billion lower for that financial year. The projection comes alongside the IMF's projection for India's GDP to grow by 6.6% this fiscal and moderate to 6.2% next fiscal. The impact of the 50% US tariffs, as per the report, have been cushioned by the GST reforms implemented by the government in September this year ahead of the Diwali festive season. Remember, India's official Q2 GDP growth numbers are expected to be released by the government today at 4 p.m. Now, despite the expected delay in India touching the $5 trillion mark, Deepak Bagla, Mission Director, Atal Innovation Mission, says the next trillions for the Indian economy will arrive sooner. At the TV9 SAP Visionaries of Viksit Bharat Summit in New Delhi, Bagla gave the example of China adding $1 trillion a year to its GDP, saying India's growth will follow that trajectory too. Listen in.
When did we start talking about China in our lives? 2008, 2009? Am I right? That's when it started coming up in everybody's discussion. What was happening in China at that time? If you look at the statistics from 2008-9 till 2016-17, China added 1 billion GDP dollars to its GDP every year. 1 trillion, sorry. $1 trillion to its GDP every year. I'll tell you the importance of this. 2014-15 में आपका GDP कोई 2.5 ट्रिलियन था, 2020 में 3.5 ट्रिलियन हुआ. इस 6 साल में जो 10 साल में, 10 भी नहीं था, 6 साल में जो 1 ट्रिलियन बढ़ा, उस 1 ट्रिलियन से 250 million people moved above the poverty line. That's the importance of your GDP. Now let's look at our GDP story. Your first trillion happened in 2006-07. 2047 से 60 साल में आपने फर्स्ट ट्रिलियन किया. सेकेंड ट्रिलियन आपने किया 2013-14 में. 7 to 8 years, you did your second trillion. Third trillion 2019 में टच हो गया था, फिर exchange rate हुआ तो फिर 21 में आया. So on 4-5 years, you did the second trillion, the third trillion. Your fourth trillion will be next year, which is again 3.5 years अगर COVID हटा दिया. Now remember, your 8th, 9th, 10th trillion will all happen in less than 12 months each.
All right, so the next trillions expected to come in just 1 year per $1 trillion added to the GDP. Well, let's talk about India's GDP because India's Q2 report card of its GDP growth is expected to be released today at 4 p.m. and various estimates have started coming in. SBI Research expects a 7.5% growth rate for Q2, while India Ratings and Research Indra expects the GDP to grow 7.2% in Q2. RBI meanwhile sticks to the 7% projection, while a Reuters poll of economists thinks that it is likely to grow at 7.3% for the second quarter of this year. Meanwhile, there are tailwinds for India. India's strong domestic demand consumption, both in rural and urban areas, seem to be the primary growth drivers, even for the second quarter of this financial year. Meanwhile, government spending has increased as the government capex has been instrumental in lifting demand. And meanwhile, Q2 earnings by corporate India also seem to be in line with expectations, with both manufacturing as well as services sectors showing robust growth. Meanwhile, there are some risks as well, and these risks emerge mostly from geo-economic factors. And of course, when you talk about the geo-economic factors, you cannot really rule out the trade ambiguity over the US-India trade deal. And then of course, there is the challenge of the depreciating Indian rupee as well against the US dollar. So now let's try and put all this into perspective. We will talk about what is expected in Q3 and for the rest of the year later. But what is likelihood of the number being above 7% when it comes to Q2 growth rate for this financial year? We have Teresa John, Deputy Head of Research and Lead Economist at Nirmal Bang, joining us this morning. Teresa, good morning. Pleasure having you on. Help us understand 7% or above. What is the likelihood of the GDP print for Q2 to be in that vicinity?
Thank you. So I'm also expecting a 7% GDP print and a 7.1% GVA print. So this is mainly supported by the fact that you have a low base from last year and that inflation, so WPI inflation is around 0% and your CPI inflation is just around 1.7%. So you will have a very low deflator. So even though your nominal GDP growth may not be very high, it may be just above 8%, you could still have a relatively high real GDP growth. But there is a possibility that it could be higher than 7% as well, because your manufacturing sector has done very well. I personally am expecting that your public administration and defense services, there could be relatively slower growth at around 6%, mainly because your government expenditure and net of subsidies and interest has actually declined. But there is an other services part within that same public administration, defense, other services that could grow faster, in which case it could surpass our expectation as well.
Chances of beyond a 7.1% GDP for Q2 growth print also likely to come in today, Teresa, but also help us understand inflation has been low and RBI has cut almost 100 basis points, in fact exactly 100 basis points in this calendar year so far, and there is another 25 basis point cut expected in the December Monetary Policy Committee meet. But so far we haven't really seen the private capex cycle take off. What is holding back the private sector from investing their billions in manufacturing in India?
So I wouldn't say that private sector capex hasn't entirely taken off, but it is very concentrated in a few sectors, not very broad based. So you have a few sectors where you have PLI linked investment that has happened over the last few years. You have sectors like metals where now you are actually seeing some green shoots. But this is concentrated. So if you look at PLI linked investment that has happened compared to the previous capex cycle that took place between say 2006 and 2012, you had a lot of very large ultra mega power projects, very large infrastructure projects, etc. This time around, we're not seeing any of that. It is largely, the private sector setting up manufacturing facilities, for PLI linked investment. You have few metal capacities that are coming up. That again is concentrated by a few companies. So the issue is that you don't have a very broad based private capex cycle. And this is also the fact that even consumption has lagged. Particularly mass market consumption has been quite sluggish over the last couple of years. So unless you see consumption also pick up in a very robust way, it is very difficult to see a broad-based recovery in private capex. And a lot of the infrastructure investment is now coming from the central government, which is why you are seeing a quite strong capex growth at the central level and to some extent even at the state level.
All right. And what about the journey from here, Teresa? Because 7.8% in Q1, likelihood of 7% or beyond in Q2. And then, of course, Q3 saw that major fillip coming by way of GST reforms. So does this sort of call for the need for analysts, researchers and think tanks to re-aggregate their calculation for the FY26 print for India's GDP? Because at this level, it seems fairly comfortable that India will grow at above 7% comfortably by the end of this financial year.
That's right. The Q1 print has been strong. The Q2 print, compared to earlier expectation, it will be mostly better than expectations. And even Q3, because of the GST cut, there is a tailwind there. Although the tariffs are also acting as a headwind, but most people have already recalibrated their numbers upwards, including us. So we were at 6.5% for FY26. We have now taken it up to 7%.
Right, and Q4 is likely to also be strong in the advent of the US-India trade deal finally getting stitched, hopefully next year, if not by end of this year.
So the US-India trade deal coming through immediately, there may not be the benefit because there has been a lot of front loading of exports that happened in the first half of the year. We are actually seeing the impact of the tariffs only from the October trade number. So even if you have a trade deal, say by the end of December, it may not come in the first 2 months, but eventually if going to FY27, that will be a positive.
All right, Teresa John, let's leave it at that for this morning. Thank you so much for your time, and let's see what that final Q2 GDP growth print happens to be at 4 p.m. today. Of course, we at News 9 will bring you that story as it unfolds. Moving on now to some corporate news. Mahindra Auto has launched the XEV9S, India's first ever electric 7-seater SUV. Now, with no visible direct competitor in this category, the XEV9S is looking to create a unique identity of its own. In Mahindra's electric origin SUV lineup, XEV9S has been positioned above the XEV9e with a launch price of 19.95 lakh rupees ex-showroom for the base model. On first looks, the XEV9S has a similar front fascia as the XEV9e. It gets the same full-width LED daytime running lamps, vertically integrated LED headlights and fog lights along with an illuminated Mahindra Electric Origin SUV logo. Mahindra & Mahindra plans to sell around 7,000 electric vehicle units monthly by the end of this financial year, a top executive told Press Trust of India. Now, the Mumbai-based automaker currently sells between 4,000 to 5,000 electric vehicles per month. It aims for the electric range to account for 25% of its overall volumes by 2027-28 calendar years. The company currently rolls out its Born electric vehicles from its Chakan-based manufacturing plant. Mahindra has already sold over 30,000 electric vehicles, including the BE6 and the XEV9 over the last 7 months, raking in a revenue of around 8,000 crore rupees. Now, in parallel, the company is also working towards establishing charging infrastructure for EVs with plans to have around 1,000 charging points by 2027 with focus on high traffic areas. And in another corporate news, SoftBank-backed e-commerce firm Meesho is set to float its initial public offering comprising a fresh issue of shares worth 4,250 crore rupees on Wednesday, December 3rd. The IPO will conclude on Friday, December 5th, and anchor investors will be allocated shares on December 2nd, a day prior to the issue opening for public. This according to the Red Herring Perspective filed yesterday. Now, apart from the fresh issue, the IPO will have an offer for sale of 10.55 crore shares by existing investors. The offer for sale includes the sale of equity shares by some of Meesho's early investors, including Elevation, Peak 15, Venture Highway and Y Combinator, among others. Meesho plans to utilize proceeds of this investment for its investment in cloud infrastructure, marketing and brand initiatives, as well as for funding inorganic growth through acquisitions and other strategic initiatives and for general corporate purposes. Now, the price band for the IPO is set at 105 to 111 rupees per share. Now, in the last financial year, Meesho connected over 500,000 transacting sellers with almost 200 million annual transacting users, facilitating $1.8 billion worth of sales. Now, the company's net merchandise value grew 29% year-on-year to 29,988 crore rupees in FY25, following 21% growth in the previous financial year. But financially, the net loss for the last financial year, FY25, stood at a little under 4,000 crore rupees, primarily due to one-time exceptional items, including reverse flip tax and prerequisite tax required for the company's transition into a public structure. And in more corporate news, Bandhan Bank has approved the sale of specific non-performing assets and written off loan portfolios through a bidding process involving asset reconstruction companies and other permitted transferees. The decision was taken at the board meeting held yesterday. The portfolios identified for sale include loans from the emerging entrepreneurs business segment, comprising group loans, small business loans and agricultural loans, as well as the aspiring business group. The bank will initiate a bidding process under the Swiss challenge method for NPAs with over 180 days past due, carrying a principal outstanding of 3,212 crore rupees as of September 30th. Separately, Bandhan Bank will auction its written-off loan portfolio, which has principal outstanding of over 3,700 crore rupees, taking the total bad loan to the vicinity of 7,000 crore rupees. Now, Bandhan Bank on October 30th posted an 88% year-on-year drop in its September quarter net profit to just 112 crore rupees. Net interest income also fell almost 12% to a little over 2,500 crore rupees, down about 350 crore rupees from the year-ago period. And with that, we will slip into a very short break. But what next for Sensex and Nifty 50 after they touched their lifetime highs yesterday? Kranti Batini will be here to tell us what to expect from the markets, not just today, but in coming weeks and months. You're watching Morning Brief at 9 right here on News 9.
What is speed? Do you ever see it? Or is it something you feel? Speed, it's relative. The more you speed up, the more the world slows down. And when you are fast enough, everything becomes still. That's when you see the world as it truly is. Servo Hypersport F5, when speed is your default.
Eastern India's first Business and Economy Literature Fest 2025 on 20th and 21st December at Taj Tal Kutir, Kolkata. EIILM Kolkata presents a Business and Economy Literature Fest 2025. Curation and ideation partner Story Nest.
पढ़ता है, खेलता है, झूलता उछलता है, दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कराता है, आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया, अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया।
सर, वाटर प्रूफिंग के लिए बेस्ट है।
वेंकी जी, एक छोटा सा गिफ्ट बिरला ओपस एश्योरेंस देने के लिए।
ऐसा क्या है इसमें?
1 साल में वाटर प्रूफिंग को कुछ भी हुआ तो वापस करके देंगे।
वापस करके देंगे?
वो भी फ्री। पेंटिंग में पहली बार बिरला ओपस एश्योरेंस। रजिस्टर करो birlaopus.com पर।
The GOAT or Bakra of satire is back. Cyrus Broja. From politics to pop culture, from your WhatsApp forwards to breaking news, nothing and no one is safe.
Relax, guys, relax. I only roast the truth, and the truth is always hilarious. Too much pressure.
Get ready for news caustic, bold, sharp, unfiltered, 100% Cyrus. Light, camera, and action. Kick back, relax, grab your favorite snack because News 9 is here with your weekend dose of entertainment. It's time to take a deeper dive into the buzzworthy happenings of the entertainment world. From celebrity gossips to exclusive conversations, from nostalgic moments to News 9's pick of the week, don't worry, we've got you covered here. And I hope you've grabbed your popcorn by now because News 9's page 3 is here to serve you everything that we call entertainment. So do stay tuned every Saturday and Sunday, 2:30 p.m.
What is to the nines? In literal terms, it's perfection. But to us, it's not just a phrase, it's an attitude. One that starts at your desk and sends a statement to the world. To the nines is about taking charge. It's a way of life where every seam, every fold, is crafted with excellence. It's timeless elegance and uncompromising quality made for the corner office. It's the ideas that inspire redefining order and elevating the tabletop. To the nines, for the leaders of today and the visionaries of tomorrow.
And now let's talk about Bihar. The ballot will tell the real tale. Usually, promises that are being made at the last minute to woo the voters. MAIDEN Yojana. Why Tejasvi made these three big promises? Prime Minister Narendra Modi interacted with women voters. The NDA government was the only guarantee of women's welfare in the state. Modi invoked the lawlessness that prevailed in 1990s under RJD. He said that the progress of the state during Jangal Raj was zero. Why has Congress not been able to crack? Why are they irrelevant in Bihar? What happened to the vote chori camp? What happened to the SIR camp? Are we looking at a close election victory or the margins are going to increase?
Back, you're watching News 9. This is Morning Brief at 9. Let's bring you all the updates from Dalal Street as markets opened just a few minutes ago. And remember, US markets were closed yesterday on account of Thanksgiving, so no real global cues for the Indian investors to digest early morning today, except that the signals on the Asian markets also seem to be mixed. You don't really have a trend line or a trajectory to follow. Meanwhile, as expected, the markets have opened more or less flat today, and this was the indication that had emerged from Gift Nifty as well. But this comes exactly a day after markets did touch, at least intraday, did touch their lifetime highs yesterday. In fact, yesterday, for a very brief moment, Sensex crossed that 86,000 level and the Nifty 50 crossed the 26,300 odd levels before dipping slightly and closing the day about 100 points lower. Meanwhile, the markets as they stand this morning, Sensex and Nifty both in the green, although it's a very, very flat start to the morning, so you can't really look at those green arrows on the screen and decipher the mood or the trend in the market this morning. Nifty 50 right now standing at about 26,227 odd levels. Remember, still about 80 points or so to go before it touches that lifetime high. Some analysts and market experts believe that the level of 26,350 could be the next resistance level for Nifty 50 before it has the potential to climb upwards to about 26,450 odd levels as well. Now, will that resistance be met today? We really don't know, because the early signs indicate that it seems to be a flattish opening, at least right now. Sensex, meanwhile, standing at about 85,800 odd points, about 200 points lesser than the 86,000 level that it did touch intraday yesterday. The small cap and the mid cap space not in as pleasant a mood as the large cap indices, and we are seeing a little bit of decline. Of course, there have been concerns about valuation in both the small cap and the mid cap space, so perhaps a little bit of profit taking is what one is seeing in the trade this morning. Meanwhile, let's pull up the Nifty 50 heat map and try and see which are the sectors which are adding to this light green that we are seeing in the market mood this morning. And it seems Reliance Industries, remember, oil prices have also cooled about 60 cents or so yesterday, and it is now standing at just about $63 or so a barrel. So Reliance, one of the largest importers of crude, seems to be a beneficiary of that. Meanwhile, the IT sector seems to be a little flattish this morning. No movement at all in TCS, and of course, like I told you, with the US markets closed, no real cue for the Indian stock markets to take from the United States. Meanwhile, the auto sector looking a little healthier. Mahindra & Mahindra, in fact, up about 2% or so. Remember, this comes exactly a day after the XEV 9S, the 7-seater electric SUV, was launched by the automaker yesterday, priced at just a little under 20 lakh rupees or so. So Mahindra & Mahindra up almost 2%, 1.76%, lifting pretty much the sentiment of the entire auto pack. Apart from that, the banking and financial industry sector seems pretty mixed. You're seeing a little bit of rise in ICICI Bank, a little bit of correction in HDFC Bank. So no real trend lines that one can spot right now, but it's not our job to do it because we've got Kranti Patini joining us this morning, equity strategist at Wealth Mill Security. Kranti, good morning. Pleasure having you back with us on News 9. Well, yesterday was, of course, this momentous, remarkable day where markets had, in fact, flirted, if I can use that word, with the Sensex and the Nifty touching intraday their lifetime highs. But then we saw some correction soon thereafter. And this morning, again, a little flattish tone is what is visible on the charts. So, as per your understanding, looking at the charts this morning, what is the next sort of resistance that Nifty or Sensex would likely face before we can say for sure that the bulls are back?
Good morning to you. Yeah, Nifty, we need to see to close decisively above 26,250. That's what the level we are watching for. By and large, markets are expected to be in a consolidation phase. We need to wait and watch how things are going to move in the next few days in terms of the government. Any reform news, that's what market has been waiting at this point of time. And also the trade deal has been lingering. We don't know when the outcome is going to come. So markets are in a wait and watch mode despite of the headline indices touching the all-time, forming a new high. But also, Karthik, we need to also take into cognizance. It took market 14 months to reach the new high. So look at the time-wise correction in the past 14 months in the headline indices. So one way we are having a time-wise correction, it's not the point-wise correction we had, but by and large, last 14 months have been, it is a stock-specific movement, what we witnessed on Indian markets. So going ahead, we have the Indian monetary policy, US monetary policy, and also the winter session of the parliament. We can expect some kind of a positive announcements towards the markets. That has been the market anticipation. And as we are stepping into the month of December, we're just nearing to the year, New Year 26. As we are nearing to the year 26, markets are going to discount the earnings of 26 and 27. That's where the margin of safety is going to be for the market. So that gives a headroom for the market to rise further and increases the margin of safety in the market. So we can look forward 26,250. Market have to decisively close at this range. In the bottom level, 25,800. This is the level we are watching for the markets. But as long as markets are above 26,000 level, the medium to short term direction of the market is a positive territory.
All right, positive territory. You're looking at potentially market slipping, maybe not under 25,800, and the next resistance could be at 26,250 if markets close at that level. But something that is likely to happen after markets close today, Kranti, is the fine print of India's Q2 GDP growth. Now, most analysts, most economists are expecting a print upwards of 7%. Now, if that were to happen, we have a 7.8% in Q1 and an over 7% in Q2. Likelihood that next week there are going to be revised estimates of India's annual growth forecast as well, potentially upwards of the 6.5% projected by RBI. What is that going to do to the sentiment of investors, especially foreign portfolio investors looking at the India growth story?
Yes, Karthik, it is a sentimental booster, definitely. As long as we maintain the magic figure of 8% growth, the our shortcomings are forgiven, and despite of the global turmoil and anything, okay, if we maintain the same growth track, and if we touch the range of 8%, forget about the shortcomings and all. The entire the global space are going to look for Indian markets. So maintaining that range is crucial for the Indian economy. Still, we are the fastest growing economy in the world right now. So maintaining this growth momentum is extremely crucial. The measures that government is taking to increase the domestic consumption, that's going to give some kind of a support to the markets going ahead. Inflation is cooling off, which is beneficial. But the number where I am looking is the 8% growth. That's a magic number for India's market as well as the economy as a whole.
All right, 8%. Well, that's a big ask. Let's see if, if the revised projections come in line with your expectations, Kranti. But looking at the charts this morning, I want to pivot now to the auto sector. And it seems Mahindra & Mahindra is the biggest gainer right now in the first few minutes of trading, coming on the back of the launch of its electric SUV, the 7-seater electric SUV, the XEV9S. And the commentary coming from the management on this launch also seems fairly positive, that they expect to sell about 7,000 odd units of electric vehicles every month by the end of this financial year. Now, what does this mean in terms of competition for Mahindra & Mahindra going up against Tata Motors, which all this while has been the leader in the EV segment? Does it seem now that investors are likely to pivot to Mahindra & Mahindra with the rise of its electric vehicle portfolio, as well as the robust sales numbers that it projects to reach?
Definitely, Karthik. Karthik, I want to mention one point. By and large, Indian auto market is portrayed as a entry-level car market. Look at Mahindra & Mahindra. They don't have any entry-level car. Everything is a mid-segment, and right now they are focusing on the 7-seater, that to electric. The way they position the portfolio of their products is the strength for Mahindra & Mahindra. That's where the outperformance is coming. And look at the stock price. Last 4-5 years, the stock has been a strong outperformer in the auto segment is concerned. Their portfolio is their strength, and not focusing on the entry level. They directly launched the mid segment, the SUV kind of our passenger utility vehicle segment. That's where Mahindra core strength is going to be. The other companies have a diversified portfolio, whereas the Mahindra has been building where there are margins, where there are market behavior, where the disposable incomes are going up. That's what their strength. So I believe Mahindra & Mahindra are going to outperform in the coming years also. So any dip on Mahindra & Mahindra, I would love to accumulate in a portfolio.
So a dip strategy, buy on dip strategy for Mahindra & Mahindra. Meanwhile, I want to shift focus now to the IPO space, because a big announcement that came yesterday, Kranti, was the fact that Meesho has finally disclosed the dates as well as the price band for its IPO, December 3rd to December 5th, with the price band of about 105 to 111 rupees per share. Now, in the pure play e-commerce space, if you keep, let's say, Paytm, which at once upon a time ran the Paytm Mall, which was an e-commerce business, keeping that aside, we haven't really seen a true blue e-commerce listing in India so far, have we? So what does this mean for investors looking at the Meesho story and looking at the e-commerce story as a means to invest in?
Karthik, there is a heightened activities going on in the IPO space, especially in India. Many companies are lining up, and we have seen how the heightened activity during the lens cut and the recent listings of many of the IPOs. But with respect to the IPO investing is concerned, the new stocks, we welcome these kind of new age business models, new business models. They have different modes and strong managements, but the valuations are the key concern for many of these stocks. But if I have to observe and analyze the IPO stocks are concerned, in the last year, around out of 100 IPOs, more than 70 IPOs reached their listing price after post listing. So with respect to make any kind of serious investments are concerned in IPO stocks, I would be wait and watch post-listing for next couple of quarters. But if any retail investor want to take the advantage of the listing gains, one can subscribe. But to make any kind of serious investments in the IPO space, there is no need of jump and buy or in a hurry. Just wait. There is a cool-off period post-listing, and one can get a comfortable valuations post-listing, at least after a couple of quarters. That has been the phenomena for many of these IPOs in the recent past.
Right. One final question on this, Kranti, before I thank you for being here today, is the fact that Meesho is still reporting losses, unlike Lenskart, which had turned profitable a few months before the IPO was announced. Meesho has still reported losses of almost 3,000 crore rupees or so for the last financial year. What does this number really mean? Even though you're seeing growth and even though you're seeing the net merchandise value grow about 30%, you're still looking at a loss in the P&L statement of the company. What does that mean for the confidence or the lack thereof for investors?
One thing, Karthik, someone analyst have told, one of the small mistake the Lenskart came up with declaring profits. So that's where the whole valuation theme went in on a lighter note. And coming to Meesho, I'm not in a hurry to buy these kind of models, business models at this point of time. Always in profit, always in the business and stock markets. Ultimate aim is stock prices are slaves to earnings. So as long as the company becomes profitable, that is the ultimate aim of any business. It's not the market share. These are the crucial things. But at the end of the day, how much money you are making, how much profit you are making for a business. But these kind of business models, look at Eternal and many of these business models, they learn in a very hard way post-listing becoming profitable. So that's where these companies are becoming and learning profitable, how to make the profits, reducing their overheads and consolidating their market share. They're learning. But ultimately, the profitability is the key strength to any company. We are not going to invest any loss-making company. Ultimately, business means profits. So these companies, they are learning in a very hard way to make profits post-listing. After listing, profits is the key.
Absolutely. So profitability, at least the path to profitability, if not that green mark on the P&L statement. Well, Kranti Vathini, as always, pleasure having you here with us on News9. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And before we slip into a break, it's time now to look at some of the global stories that we are tracking for you this morning. US President Donald Trump says soaring tariff revenue could allow the US to abolish federal income tax entirely within 2 years, a seismic shift in American fiscal policy. Donald Trump says his administration has commissioned a lot more B-2 Spirit bombers following their deployment in US attacks on Iran's nuclear sites earlier this year. The Trump administration launches sweeping checks on green card holders from 19 countries after an alleged Afghan national shot 2 National Guard troops near the White House, triggering a security-driven immigration review. South Africa calls Donald Trump's exclusion threat from the next G20 summit in Miami punitive and regrettable, but insists other G20 nations express solidarity as diplomatic tensions deepen with Washington. Russian President Vladimir Putin says Moscow will end its offensive only if Ukraine pulls out of all territory claimed by Russia, warning his army will seize the land militarily if Kyiv refuses. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer defends his government's new budget, says higher taxes essential to stabilise public finances and rebuild UK's economy. The European Space Agency secures its biggest funding package of 22 billion euros as Europe races to boost its space independence and compete with US and Chinese capabilities. Australia pushes through a sweeping overhaul of its environmental laws, forcing major carbon-heavy projects to publicly disclose emissions and pollution reduction targets. The death toll from the Hong Kong residential complex inferno has risen to 94, with many still missing, triggering one of the city's biggest rescue operations in years. All these stories on the other side of the break. You're watching Morning Brief at 9.
झूलता उछलता है, दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कराता है, आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया, अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया.
A resurgent India is racing towards the Viksit Bharat goal, braving global economic headwinds. Bulletproofing our economy from these uncertainties are Bharat's homegrown businesses. Powered by tech-led innovation, Indian entrepreneurs are truly scaling up, riding the next wave of disruption with AI and cloud to break into the big global league. TV9 Network in association with SAP presents Visionaries of Viksit Bharat, a series celebrating inspirational business leaders shaping tomorrow. Watch them take an iconic leap at Visionaries of Viksit Bharat conclaves. Exclusively on News 9.
यही मौका है बिजनेस को बढ़ाने का, पर पैसा.
अपनी सुपर पावर यूज करने का टाइम आ गया है.
आप टेंशन मत लीजिए, IIFL फाइनेंस से झटपट गोल्ड लोन लीजिए और बिजनेस आगे बढ़ाइए.
आपके जैसे सुपर हीरोज ऐसी छोटी मोटी प्रॉब्लम से थोड़ी ना रुकते हैं. इसीलिए लाइफ जब भी आगे बढ़ने का मौका दे तो अपनी सुपर पावर, अपना गोल्ड यूज करिए और IIFL फाइनेंस से गोल्ड लोन लीजिए. IIFL फाइनेंस करता है सीधी बात.
Thanks for staying tuned in. You're watching Morning Brief at 9 right here on News 9. Time now to move to the global stories that we're tracking for you. As always, let's begin with US President Donald Trump. Well, the US President has floated the idea of sharply reducing and potentially eliminating income tax, saying record tariff revenue could replace it. The President has long defended his tariff-first policy and had recently proposed a $2,000 dividend to Americans funded through tariff income. Listen in.
Made the deals. I mean, they respect us, but they pay us, as an example, Japan $650 billion, South Korea $350 billion, European Union $950 billion, and they are building plants now in the United States because they don't want to pay tariffs. So this is one of the biggest things economically that's never happened. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. And over the next couple of years, I think we'll substantially be cutting, and maybe cutting out completely, but we'll be cutting income tax. Could be almost completely cutting it because the money we're taking in is going to be so large.
And the US President Donald Trump also told US service members on Thursday that his administration has ordered more B-2 Spirit stealth bombers following their use in strikes on Iranian nuclear sites earlier this year.
We have the strongest military anywhere in the world, and you saw that with Iran, with those beautiful B-2 bombers. They totally obliterated the potential nuclear supply of Iran, and they did it in the dark of night with no moon, no light, no nothing. Early in the morning, they attacked. You couldn't see a thing, and every single bomb hit its mark. Every single bomb. The Atomic Energy Commission said it was total obliteration. Remember when some of the fake news tried to say, well, maybe it wasn't as bad. Well, it was much worse than anybody thought. And I want to thank those pilots and all of the mechanics and all of the people that serviced and worked on the B-2 bombers. We just ordered a lot more of them.
More B-2 bombers for the US Air Force, but the bomb of inflation hitting US citizens. So while US President Donald Trump had centered his presidential campaign on promises to lower soaring prices, rising living costs are forcing many Americans to rely on food banks as of now, fueling criticism that his economic policies have not yet eased household pressure. Take a look.
67-year-old Gail Heathcote of Chicago is scouring the grocery store for deals and tells Reuters she is struggling to feed her family.
I worked my whole life. For what? For me to be still struggling?
She's putting the blame on President Donald Trump, saying the cost of living has become unbearable.
Prices are ridiculous. And that man that's up there in that White House needs to go. He's killing us. I want him to come and live in my house for 1 week and see how we eat.
Trump campaigned on a pledge to lower consumer prices, but is now facing the same hard reality that dogged his predecessor, Joe Biden. In recent weeks, Trump has touted lower prices.
And eggs are way down now. We're getting prices down for this country.
While inflation is down, goods that are subject to Trump's tariffs in particular cost more than before, and wage gains for many have been largely offset by higher prices. The latest Consumer Price Index data from September shows a nearly 15% increase in the price of beef, a 7% increase for bananas, and more than 20% for coffee. Higher prices have forced Heathcote to turn to door dashing for extra income.
A lot of my customers are saying, "Why are you out here? Now, let's go for some beans."
The great-grandmother relies on pantries to put food on the table.
It's breaking me. How many other people are out there that need this food and they're here? I saw a lady here with a newborn baby.
More people are coming to our pantries.
Marie Jochum from the Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Chicago says demand has risen sharply in recent months.
We're having more first-time recipients. So right now we're seeing a 20% increase in people coming for the first time to a pantry.
29-year-old Devontae Conwell is one of them.
I had to find a pantry because, food is coming up so expensive. And I got a family to take care of, man. There's too many bills coming in.
Food costs have become a major political issue as Thanksgiving nears following a record-long government shutdown. The American Farm Bureau Federation estimates it will cost 5% less this year than in 2024, thanks to steep discounts for turkeys. But that tally is still 13% more than in 2019, during Trump's first term and before the pandemic. Half of Thanksgiving dinner's other foods, including sweet potatoes, frozen peas, and a fresh vegetable tray appetizer, cost more than in 2024.
And moving on now, tensions have escalated between the United States and South Africa after President Donald Trump said Pretoria will not be invited to next year's G20 summit in Miami following Washington's boycott of the leaders' meeting in Johannesburg last week. Now, South Africa has called the move punitive and regrettable. Since returning to office in January, President Donald Trump has repeatedly criticized South Africa's domestic and foreign policies, including pushing discredited claims that government is targeting its white minority. Now, the G20 summit chaired by South Africa, leaders adopted a joint declaration on climate change and other global challenges despite U.S. objections. The White House has accused Pretoria of politicizing its role as chair and even raised objections over how the G20 presidency was handed over at the end of the summit. South Africa maintains the transfer was done correctly and says U.S. representatives were simply not present at the time. And from US, let's move to the UK. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer defended Britain's tax-raising budget, saying the increases from consumer goods to electric vehicles are aimed at rebuilding economic strength despite warnings of pressure on living standards. Listen in.
What we're doing is growing the economy. The forecast for the economy this time last year was that in 2025 it would grow by 1%. We said we want to defy that forecast. The numbers came in yesterday. It's 1.5%. So that's 50% over the forecast. That's the spirit in which we go forward from this budget. I'm optimistic about this country. I think by putting in the proper foundations, taking the fair and necessary decisions, we can defy all of the forecasts. We've already done it for 2025. I'm determined to do it for the years to come.
All right, from rising income taxes now to the world of cryptocurrencies. As part of a broader modernization push, the Bolivian government will integrate cryptocurrencies into the formal financial system, while S&P Global downgrades its ratings of Tether, the world's largest stablecoin. Here's a roundup of the big crypto stories from this week.
From Bolivia's modern monetary policy to Tether's downgrade, this is Crypto Weekly. As part of a broader modernization push, the Bolivian government will integrate cryptocurrencies into the financial system, starting with stablecoins. The country's finance minister said banks will be allowed to offer crypto services so that they begin to function as a legal tender payment instrument. These services include savings accounts, credit cards, and loans. Crypto adoption in Bolivia surged after a ban was lifted last year, and as more customers use the asset as a hedge against the depreciating Boliviano. Naver Financial, a unit of South Korean internet giant Naver, has agreed to acquire Dunamu. It's an operator of the country's largest cryptocurrency exchange, Upbit. The all-stock deal is valued at over $10 billion and will be one of the largest in Asia this year. Swedish fintech firm Klarna will launch a US dollar-backed stablecoin, becoming the latest major payments company to move deeper into digital assets as regulators tighten oversight of the sector. The token, called Klarna USD, is currently in testing and will be available in 2026. The company said it will be fully backed by the US dollar. S&P Global downgraded its rating of Tether, the world's largest stablecoin. It cited an increase in higher-risk assets in its reserves and persistent gaps in disclosure. Tether said it strongly disagrees with the characterization presented in the report by S&P.
And that's all we had for you on this edition of Morning Brief at 9. Thank you so much for tuning in, but news continues right here on News 9, so keep watching.
Red Fort explosion. Let's get you all the updates. Following the blast, there is of course a South Indian connection of Dr. Shaheen Shahid. Because this is news of national import that search operations are underway across the entire Al Falah University campus. The blast killed 12 people. Prices, however,